I still remember how it felt back in April 1945. The war had been raging for nearly 6 years, and the world was tired. Every street in Europe seemed to carry the echo of marching boots. Every home had lost someone. And then, finally, it came down to this. Berlin. The last stand of Hitler's empire. Berlin wasn't just another city by then. It was the heart of everything that had gone wrong with the world, the place where it all began, and now where it would all end. I had read the reports, seen the photos, but to truly understand those final days, you have to picture it. A city in ruins, smoke rising from every block, people hiding in basements as the sound of artillery rolled across the skyline like thunder. On April 16, 1945, the Soviet Union launched what they called the Berlin Strategic Offensive. It was the final push, the one meant to crush Nazi Germany once and for all. Marshal Georgy Zhukov led the attack from the east, and Marshal Ivan Konev came from the south. Between them, millions of Red Army soldiers, tanks, artillery, trucks, everything they could throw at the Germans. Their first target was the Seelow Heights, a line of hills about 50 miles east of Berlin. The Germans had dug in there, the last real defense before the capital. At 3 in the morning, the Soviets opened fire with thousands of guns. The entire sky lit up in red and orange. People said you could see it from miles away, like the end of the world had come. For 3 days, the Soviets fought tooth and nail to break through. The Germans, desperate and hopeless, fought back with what little they had left. Old tanks, makeshift weapons, even boys from the Hitler Youth. By April 19th, the line finally broke. Seelow Heights was lost. The road to Berlin was open, but the cost was terrible. Tens of thousands of men had fallen on both sides. By April 20th, Hitler's birthday, ironically, Soviet shells were landing inside the city. The once mighty German capital was reduced to rubble. Streets were torn apart, the air filled with dust and smoke. Civilians were running in all directions, trying to find shelter. Some still believed the Führer had a secret plan to save them. Others knew it was over, but couldn't say it out loud. Inside his bunker, deep beneath the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler refused to believe the truth. He shouted at his generals, blamed everyone but himself, and issued orders to divisions that no longer existed. Above him, Berlin was burning, but down there, he still imagined victory. As the Soviet forces surrounded the city, the fighting became brutal. I've read accounts from both sides, men who fought street by street, house by house. Every wall, every corner turned into a battlefield. The Germans called it total war. The Soviets called it justice. Marshal Zhukov's forces came from the east, Konev's from the south. And by April 25th, Berlin was completely encircled. No one could get in or out. Around 90,000 German soldiers were trapped inside, along with nearly 2 million civilians. On the outside, over 2 million Soviet troops waited, with more tanks and artillery than the world had ever seen in one place. For the next week, Berlin was hell on earth. Buildings collapsed under constant bombardment. Entire city blocks vanished in clouds of fire and dust. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and burned concrete. And yet, people kept fighting, because that's what they were told to do. General Helmuth Weidling, the man in charge of Berlin's defense, did what he could, but his troops were broken, out of ammunition, and scattered. There were old men, young boys, and whatever was left of the once proud Wehrmacht. They fought because surrender wasn't an option, not to them. Not yet. In some parts of the city, the Soviets found pockets of fierce resistance. SS officers ordered their men to fight to the death. Hitler Youth fired Panzerfausts from windows. Soviet tanks moved slowly, careful not to drive into ambushes. You can imagine the chaos, gunfire echoing through narrow streets, explosions shaking the ground, civilians crying in the dark. By April 27th, the Soviets had reached the city center. Their target was the Reichstag, the symbolic heart of Nazi power. Capturing it would mean the war in Europe was effectively over. But it wouldn't come easy. The Germans had fortified it, turning the building into a fortress. Inside the Führer bunker, time was running out. Hitler's world had shrunk to a few underground rooms filled with smoke and despair. On April 28th, he heard that Mussolini, his fascist ally in Italy, had been captured and executed by his own people. That was the moment he realized it was over. He told those around him he would never be captured alive. On April 30th, 1945, he made good on that promise. He and Eva Braun, his companion, took their own lives. The empire they built on fear and lies died with them, buried beneath the rubble of their own making. The next day, Soviet troops stormed the Reichstag. The fighting inside was savage. Grenades, machine guns, close combat, room by room, floor by floor. When it was over, the red flag was raised above the building. For the Soviet Union, it was more than victory. It was vengeance for Stalingrad, for Leningrad, for every life lost to Nazi invasion. By May the 2nd, General Weidling surrendered the city. The guns fell silent. Berlin, the heart of the Third Reich, was finished. But victory didn't bring peace right away. What the Soviets found inside the city shocked even them. There were bodies everywhere, soldiers, civilians, children. The smell of death was everywhere. Buildings were still burning, water and food were scarce. People wandered the streets in disbelief, unsure what to do next. I've seen the photos from those days. Black and white images of soldiers resting among the ruins, of women carrying buckets through piles of bricks, of children playing near burnt-out tanks. It's haunting, because behind every photo is a story we'll never fully know. The Soviets lost around 80,000 men in that battle alone. The Germans lost even more. And for the civilians caught between them, the number is impossible to count. The Battle of Berlin wasn't just the end of a war. It was the collapse of an entire world. When the Allies later met at Potsdam to discuss Germany's future, Berlin was nothing but rubble. The city was divided among the victors. The Soviets took the East, the Americans, British, and French took the West. It was supposed to be temporary, but we all know what happened next. The Cold War, the Berlin Wall, a divided world once again. Still, out of that destruction, something remarkable happened. The people of Berlin rebuilt. They started from nothing, scavenging bricks, clearing debris by hand, helping each other survive. The same streets that had once echoed with marching boots and explosions slowly filled again with laughter, traffic, and life. When you walk through Berlin today, you can still see reminders of those final days. Bullet holes in old buildings, memorials to the fallen, the place where the bunker once stood. The city doesn't hide its scars. It wears them as proof that it survived. The fall of Berlin was one of the darkest and most defining moments of the 20th century. It marked the end of Hitler's madness, the end of the war in Europe, and the beginning of a new world, one built from the ashes of the old. And if there's one thing history keeps teaching us, it's that even after the worst destruction, people find a way to rebuild. They always do. The guns fell silent, the smoke cleared, and out of the ruins came a promise. Never again. Never again would the world allow something like that to happen. But as the years passed and new walls rose in Berlin, that promise became a reminder. Peace is never permanent. It must be protected, just like those who fought for it in 1945. So when I look back at those days, the shattered city, the faces in the rubble, the red flag over the Reichstag, I don't just see the end of a war. I see the endurance of humanity. Because even after everything burned, Berlin still stood, and so did we.